Right, so this is a demo video for my procedural foliage tool. So it's Houdini engine based and it's all off of L systems. So to work it, you'll have to have Houdini engine installed as part of UE4. Can also work in Unity. Most of it will work perfectly fine in Unity. There's a few things that I've got set up for materials that will only work in Unreal, but it would be easy enough to develop. It's as simple as putting some more nodes in that are Unity based rather than Unreal. Um, so this is what you've got. You've got one HDA that you bring into the scene, and you can pick at the moment out of 3 different foliage types. So there's a tree on there as well. This one doesn't have a material on it. And then kind of shrubbery. You can change the scale on these as well because they're a bit. But yeah. So we'll bring it back to the flower for now. So as a start, you can control the average height, and as it will go up, it'll grow more leaves on. As well, I forgot to mention that it's all based off of the UE4 materials, all the textures. So all you have to do is copy the reference and paste it in there, and it will automatically assign that. I'll do it later on with the tree, but as you go down, you have a bunch of these parameters you can control. I won't go through them all since they take a while to cook sometimes. But you can control pretty much anything from the thickness of the stem, the scale of all the flowers on here together, just the flower head. You can how much noise this will have on, so if I turn that up, it'll make it more noisy. And you can use that in a combination with the gravity and just flop it over more. And then if you don't like how it looks, there's random seeds tied to it as well to change things. You can also turn on group mode, so now you have a bunch of them. You can change the density, so how many you have, the spread. So if I turn this up, they're going to be spread out a lot wider. You can also change the radius, so if you want them in more of a kind of ellipse kind of shape, then you can do that as well. Again, there's a random seed tied to that. So if you don't like it, you can change it around. There's also a option for having them in a line. So circle and line, so this has a spread jitter on it as well, so if you don't want them quite so uniform, you can mess with this, see how jittered along this line you want. Again, random seed, density, and spread. Also, this is for all of the foliage types. If you go into mesh input, the way the tool is set up is so that the artist can use whatever mesh they want. So the L system is set up for this, for instance, to do a flower, but I can go into here and pick a new file, and just anywhere on your desktop or wherever you've saved it, and change out the meshes. So you can make it a sunflower, you can make it a rose, a tulip, whatever. And there is a separate one for each of these leaves on here. You can input the same one if you wanted to, and they all have scale and rotation on them. So it's recommended, and I've got it written in the notes up here, that when you import it, you have it obviously 0, 0 and the kind of scale you'd want. But if you fail to do that, then you can kind of change some of the stuff in here. But the plant will grow from the pivot. So if you put, for instance, the pivot in the middle of the leaf, then they won't grow properly. But this is for everything. So every single plant has a mesh input, and you as the artist can pick whatever you want in there. So I've just got some Quixel assets plugged in at the moment that I turned into leaf cards. So if I now go over to the tree, there we go. And so I can display the material thing on this. So this is a pine, so I've got a pine material here. If I copy the reference, obviously they need UVs, and you have the leaf cards UV'd and textured before you input them into this. But there we go. You'd need to increase the scale of them. So and then there's one for the stem as well. I'll just grab a random one, so this won't look perfect, but it's just to show that you can just change the material on the fly. And there we go. So this has a bunch of parameters as well. So growth amount is kind of the density of the leaves. So you can turn that up or down, and however many you want. It'll grow the branches out as well. So if you turn that down, then it'll start growing out. And then you can change the scale of the branches and their length as well. There's also a multiplier. So if I change those, where is it? It begins to, because it will taper and get smaller as it goes up. So the multiplier just changes by how much that happens. It's more or less noticeable depending on whatever you've got these thicknesses set to. But you can mess around with all of these. Turn down the branch thickness. Turn the scale back up. And get it to a place where you like it. It obviously looks pretty ugly at the moment, but if you play around with it, you can get something that looks cool. Has the same with noise, gravity on this one as well as the flowers. So that was a bit less noticeable because I didn't have the plants grown out. So if I grow these out a bit more, there you go. You can see now that they're kind of flopping down a bit because I turned the gravity up. You can also change the angle the branches grow out from. So there's that tree variation. I've also built into this, as well as the random seed, 2 variations. So if you change it, again, it needs some tweaking to get it looking right, but you can see from the other video on the channel that the kind of things you can get out of it if you set the parameters right. This has pretty much the same parameters as the other tree. And then this is the kind of shrubbery. So again, there's no material on this. But you can play around with all these the same way. This also has grouping like the flowers, so you can grow it in an arc. And you can choose the arc angle. So if you want it growing 3/4 of a circle, you type in 270 and it grows like that. So you also control the radius of that, and it'll grow in, there's options for a line and a circle, so it will spawn randomly within a circle like that. So because they work with materials as well, anything that you add into a material, such as like I've got the simple wind set up, it'll work with these, so you can pretty much put as much or as less into the material as you want, and you can give yourself even more control on top of the procedural asset. But yeah, that's a lot of what is built into it, parameters wise, and mesh inputs, and just the kind of stuff you can generate with it. And if you play around, you can get pretty much infinite variations on stuff pretty easily. So yeah.